Welcome to the Inside Track on Real Estate with the Dekker Team. I'm Ken Dekker, and today I got a very special guest. I've got Jim Halloran, and Jim's with PuroClean. And Jim, what type of services do you offer?
PuroClean is a disaster restoration business. We offer flood, fire, mold, and trauma cleanup for if you have sewer backups in your home, any kind of disaster that way. That's the kind of stuff that we do.
Wow, the yucky stuff that people wish that never happens to them.
Exactly right, exactly right. So what we do, we call ourselves the paramedics of property damage. So we come in, just like, if you have an incident, a health issue or whatever, the paramedics come in and they rescue you and they look after you. Right. Okay, we're going to do that for your home. What we want to do is, we understand that as a homeowner, this is something that may not have ever happened to you in the past. Mm-hmm. And we take the time to sit and listen and understand and hear your concerns. And then we take the time to explain the whole process to you. What we want to do is we want to take that traumatic situation and turn it into as positive a result as we possibly can. We want your home to be back to pre-loss condition as quickly as possible.
Maybe even better.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it's got to be the same for sure as it was, especially if we're doing insurance work. Okay, we do upgrades as well. But as part of the insurance business, it needs to be like, kind, and quality, they call it.
Right. And when I say maybe even better, sometimes there's some wear and tear on your house, and you're going to be replacing with like quality, but brand new.
Exactly right, yes.
So that can be a bit of an upgrade sometimes for people.
Yeah, so that's how it sometimes turns into a positive for them as well, right? Because you're getting new walls potentially, or new paint, or new flooring, or new ceilings, what have you.
Okay. So today's show, I really wanted to connect a bit on mold. Because mold's one of those, sometimes it's kind of unseen, sometimes it sneaks up on us, sometimes it is seen. And there's a lot of talk about mold in the industry these days, where if there's mold, it can affect the sale of a house.
Right.
Now, my understanding is every building has some mold.
Every building. Mold is naturally occurring in our environment. There's mold outside, there's mold inside. I'm sure in your college days you've got an old piece of pizza in the fridge somewhere that's got turned green or what have you. That's mold.
Probably have something in my fridge right now that's gone green.
Right. So it's pretty common. And the biggest thing with mold is, if you notice that you have mold, first thing is, it's not the end of the world. It's something that can be dealt with.
Okay. And so other than it maybe sometimes has a musty smell, that's a way of telling if you might have some mold somewhere, it's visually seeable sometimes.
Yep.
But what are the hidden effects that sometimes we may not realize that are happening to us in our health area that mold might be causing?
If you have mold in your home of any significant quantity, and you have young children or older folks or someone with a compromised immune system, asthma, that kind of thing, it can irritate your respiratory tract and it can exacerbate those illnesses and make them worse.
Okay, so if someone's constantly got a chronic cough or having trouble breathing, wheezing, that kind of thing, it may be, doesn't necessarily have to be, but it could be.
Even if you had a bad cold, if you have mold and you go into that type of area, it can worsen, it can clog you up a little bit more. Some people are more susceptible than others. For myself, if I walk into a home with a reasonable amount of mold, I'll call it, and I see lots, so I'm going to clog up right away within probably 5 minutes of being in the home. I'll know right away that there is mold, and it's just a matter of finding it.
So you have a built-in detecting system.
I do.
Okay, and so how do you protect yourself from mold when you're doing cleanups? Or maybe people are doing their own cleanups, and we'll talk about that if it's a small amount, how they protect themselves.
So the first thing that we need to do is, if you've found that you've got some mold and that kind of thing, and you're going to take care of it yourself, you need to put on a dust mask of some sort. You need to protect your respiratory tract from breathing it in, because that's where the damage is going to happen.
Okay, and so just a dust mask?
Yep. There's a HEPA mask. I can't remember what the exact number of the mask is, but you just ask for a mask that from Home Depot or any of those stores.
Okay, so you can go to one of the big box hardware stores and you can get a dust mask that will filter that low size.
No, particulate out, that's right.
Okay, so very cool. Now I think they also have furnace filters that will filter that level out as well.
It's HEPA that you're looking for, which stands for High Efficiency Particulate Action. I can't remember what the A means, but it's HEPA is the acronym, and that's what you want. If you got a HEPA filter, you're golden.
Okay, great. So that will even take out, because your fan, if you have a furnace that blows air, which is probably best for not having mold accumulation because you got air circulation, right?
That's right.
You find people with baseboard heaters where there's no real air circulation, they might have more susceptibility to mold growing?
They can for sure. Airflow is a good thing to keep mold spores from attaching to a surface and then adhering, it's starting to grow and that kind of thing. And in order to have mold grow, you really need 3 things. Oxygen is just a given, so we're not going to talk about that.
Because we need that too.
We need that too, exactly. You need a warm temperature, okay? So somewhere in the area of 70 to 90 degrees or higher is ideal for, that's Fahrenheit, that's ideal for mold growth. You need a moisture.
So that's the temperature we keep our house at typically?
Exactly.
Okay. Yeah, 70, 72, 73. So that's where they like to grow.
Yep, and you need 60% relative humidity. Now when I say that, most homes are not at 60%, but there can be little isolated pockets in your home where there may be a little bit of seepage, or there's somebody spilled something, or there's a little drip on a tap, or a pipe with a small leak, or a pinhole, that kind of thing. That raises the humidity level. That provides optimal environment for mold growth as well. The other thing is you need a food source. And as a food source, most of the things in the home can be considered a food source. One that is not, and there's typically some confusion often, is concrete walls. You often see like a little white fur on concrete walls sometimes, and that's just the calcium effervescence from the concrete itself. Okay, so sometimes it's mold and sometimes it's not that you're seeing. You need to kind of have a real good knowledge of what you're looking at in order to be able to determine that.
Okay. Yeah, I see that quite often on concrete where moisture is wicking through the concrete from outside, and you get that effervescence.
Yeah.
And it's a calcium buildup because it just evaporates from the inside and leaves that residue.
That's right. And mold can't grow on the concrete itself. And I'm sure that one of your listeners is going to say, I've got mold on my concrete. That's because there's probably dirt, or there's paint, or some other debris that it's actually growing on. It's not growing on the concrete itself, okay?
Oh, okay. So it'll actually eat paint?
Oh, absolutely. It's one of its, especially latex paint, it's one of its favorites.
It likes paint. Okay, so I'm going to tell my wife I'm not repainting the house then. So what else can it grow? So it can grow on anything?
Organic.
Organics.
Yes.
Anything it can break down.
So paper, paint, dirt and dust and debris. If you look at wood, you look at your moldings today are what they call MDF. They're medium density fiberboard. That's a great food source, okay, for mold. Where the baseboard and the wall meet, if you've got some moisture in there, it's nice and dark, it's nice and quiet, there's no airflow, mold can just, grow very nicely in there.
Right behind the trim. They even put a pocket behind the trim because they save wood, so they have like a recessed part in the...
Yep, and it's just a nice little nesting ground. If you've got too much moisture, that's where it's going to grow.
Nice. So if we've got moisture in certain areas, what can we do to alleviate that moisture?
Well, the first thing is you need to keep your relative humidity in your home at less than 60%. Typically in the summertime, you want to keep your house around 40% relative humidity. Basements are a little bit of a challenge just because of the nature of what they are. A dehumidifier is a great way to do that. If you don't have a dehumidifier, if you can crack open a window or you've got good air conditioning that creates airflow on a regular basis, or use a little oscillating fan. Just let it run to create some airflow so that the mold just doesn't have a place to land.
So you'd even suggest maybe even keeping your fan on your furnace running?
Yep, that's a great idea. And newer houses have the HRVs, right? And they run pretty steady, and that's very helpful. But you need to make sure that you maintain your HRV so that you don't get a buildup on the filters and stuff there.
Okay. So an HRV, for those that maybe don't know, is a heat recovery ventilation system which brings stale air out of the house and brings in fresh air to replace it. Goes up past a honeycomb kind of system so that it transfers some of the warmth. The airs don't touch, but they pass
like a heat exchanger.
A heat exchange, so that some of the heat gets transferred to the cold air coming in, so you don't lose all your warmth.
Right.
Just like turning on a fan. Now, some houses, to avoid spending the money, a builder might cut a corner, and they found loopholes in the building code, and that is it has to have a central ventilating system, so they put a central switch by your thermostat, and that turns your bathroom exhaust fan on, which sucks out air, which does do what they're asking for. The other thing I find is a lot of furnace contractors will suggest a humidifier for the furnace, and I find in modern construction we have the opposite problem. We have too much humidity, usually not enough.
Yes, with tighter and tighter houses being built, that's exactly true. Typically in the wintertime, your relative humidity in a home is going to drop down to 18%. Okay, sometimes a little bit less than that. And when that happens, you're going to feel it. You're going to wake up, your eyes maybe a little dry, or your throat's a little dry in the morning. And if your humidity level's too low, it can affect your wooden furniture in the house. It can affect your hardwood floors. And that's one of the reasons when you're putting hardwood or laminate floor down, you leave a little gap around the outside for expansion and contraction, because it actually absorbs, okay, and then releases moisture depending on your humidity levels.
Okay, so are there different types of molds? You hear people go, "Oh, that's black mold, or that's orange mold," or are some different and some?
There certainly is. There's many different species of mold, and most of the molds that we see in our homes are non-toxic, or relatively non-toxic to a healthy individual. The most common you're going to see is some black mold in the basement, along a baseboard. You've had your couch or your wall unit up against it, and there's just been, the humidity stayed there for a period of time. It's something that relatively minor. The homeowner can look after it themselves. If it's essentially a foot by a foot square area, it's something that you can self-remediate. You don't need to call in a professional. And that type of mold, it can be aspergillus, there's penicillium. They're probably the most common in our environment. They're the least harmful, okay? If you have a persistent leak, a steady drip for weeks or months on end, you can get into different types of mold, and they actually, mold is very fascinating. It's got beautiful colors, the whole rainbow. You can have red, you can have green, you can have yellow, etc. But if you have a wet environment for a long time with warmth, you're going to get into potentially some Stachybotrys, which is very harmful to humans. It's not real common up here. We do find it. It's very common in Florida, okay? And that's one of the most harmful molds to humans. So if you see the black mold, as everybody calls it, first thing is don't panic. It's probably not the end of the world. It can be dealt with. Just remember, if you've got people with compromised immune systems, okay, we need to get it dealt with relatively quickly.
Okay, and so if I'm a homeowner and I pull out my couch for my spring cleaning and there's some black mold on the baseboard behind in the basement because it hasn't had enough airflow, a little bit too much moisture back there, how do I clean it? How do I get rid of it? Like I hear a lot of people say, "Oh, just spray it with bleach."
Absolutely. You hear that's the most common thing. Stop. Do not use mold. It is the worst thing for your respiratory tract. Sorry, bleach.
Yeah.
It is the worst thing for your respiratory tract. What you need to do is you need to look and see that it's something that you can deal with yourself. Get a pair of gloves on, put one of those dust masks on that we talked about. Use dish soap and water, warm water, not a ton of water because you don't want to soak it. You want a relatively moist cloth with the dish soap. Wipe the mold down. If you need to do it 2 or 3 times, get it scrubbed and then dry it. Take a fan, an oscillating fan again, put it 3 or 4 feet away and just leave it for the day to let it dry. Make sure that it dries thoroughly. You may have a little bit of staining. Make sure that it dries and make sure that whatever the source was, if there was something that was spilled or a leak or a little drip or any of those little things, that it's taken care of at the same time.
Okay, get rid of the source of the moisture. And I guess you put the respiratory mask on because when you rub it, you're going to disturb the spores.
So when you go after mold, it has a natural defense mechanism. It doesn't want to die, just like we don't want to die. So it's going to sporulate, and it's going to begin to release some spores into the immediate area and hopefully get picked up into the air, and then it can live on, kind of thing. So that's why you don't want too much water, because you don't want to give it a nice home, okay? And you wear that respirator so that you don't get those spores.
And the
in
water
your
and the
recipe.
soap kind of attaches to the spores, does it? It holds it in?
That's right. See, the dish soap is a slightly alkaline cleaner, and mold doesn't like that. Okay, so it's actually the dish soap it's got a surfactant in it as well, and that's what's getting the mold in it, and it's removing it from the source. The water is just kind of the solvent, I guess, to kind of help disperse it.
Okay. All right. So if you're joining us on the Inside Track on Real Estate, we're having a fascinating conversation around mold with Jim Halloran of PuroClean. And Jim does fire restoration, water restoration, mold remediation.
And trauma site cleanup.
And trauma site cleanup. Trauma site cleanup. That sounds awful.
It is awful. It's something most common would be unattended death. Okay, so when somebody passes and it's left for a period of time, body fluids release and those types of things. So, you know, you've got all kinds of potential pathogens and that kind of stuff that needs to be cleaned up.
So you go clean up all that.
Yeah, fortunately, somebody's already been there and there's no body or anything to deal with. It's just the aftermath of that.
Okay. All right. So let's get back to mold. I think it's a safer subject. So we can clean it ourselves. If it's a small area, we're going to wear a dust mask. We're going to use soap and a little bit of water. We're going to wipe it down several times, scrub it off.
Right.
And then if there's some staining, can we paint over that? Do we have to seal it?
You can do both. You can buy paints today that have a little bit of what they call an antimicrobial in them, okay? And they're designed to provide a little bit of a barrier to stop mold from regrowing.
So that would be like bathroom paints and that sort of thing? Do they have a...
Bathroom paints are designed specifically for high moisture areas. If you go to wherever your local box store or wherever you buy your paint, you can ask for an antimicrobial paint, and they have specific ones for just for that. They also have some sealants and things that you can put on. They're more of a commercial application, but they are available in a not as strong a mixture, but they are available as well.
All right. So let me talk a little bit, because I know we do home inspections on properties that we sell, and from time to time there's mold in the attic. Sometimes people will cut corners and vent a bathroom fan into the attic space, which is a really poor idea because you're introducing a lot of moisture into an area. In the wintertime it's cold, so you have condensation, it freezes.
You get all kinds of frosting.
And you get all kinds of frost. And then in the summer it's a really hot location because sun's beating down on your roof, and it's not the same temperature as your house. Your attic's designed to be the temperature of outside, or as close as possible to that. So you get some mold buildup.
Absolutely.
In some areas. Is that a health threat?
It can be. The best, if you want to call it that, the best part of mold in an attic is it's generally not in the living space, so there's no immediate health hazard, but it's something that it's more of a structural hazard to the building itself that needs to be dealt with, because mold is feeding off of the food source, and if it's the sheeting in your attic, or if it's the roof trusses, or any other wood surface in there, or even the insulation in some types of insulation, there's a lot of homes that have blown in, and the cellulose especially, it's a paper, mold loves that stuff, okay? So what it's doing is it's decaying and it's breaking that structure of your home down, and over a period of time, you can have structural integrity issues.
Okay. So that's why a lot of times when people are re-shingling a roof, if they're a great roofer, they'll go in the attic space and look for mold, because if there's any mold on the underside of the sheathing, they may change a couple of those 4x8 sheets of sheathing at the same time, because that's the time to do it if you've got shingles off.
Yeah, it is, for sure.
Yeah. Okay, great. So let's say we've got a bad mold problem.
Okay.
We've had, maybe we left the house vacant for a while. We come back, the basement's got mold all over the walls or something because it didn't have the airflow, it was too moist, or we had a leak that we didn't know about, basement flooded, it's gotten in behind the drywall. What kind of recourse do you do when you come out to look at a problem like that?
First thing I would do in a problem like that is, as a homeowner, you need to call a professional. You need to call somebody that is certified by the industry, and the industry certification body that we belong with is called the Institution of Inspection, Cleaning, and Restoration certification. And that is a North America and several countries in Europe certification body. So they provide the standard, they provide the testing, they provide the criteria, they provide all the things we need as a contractor and all the things you need as a homeowner in order to make sure that when you detect mold or other issues, that they're looked after in a prescribed proper manner and that things are done satisfactorily so that the mold's not going to come back or the problem's not going to come back. Okay, so someone like PuroClean, we're going to come in, we're going to do a free assessment. If you've got a little bit of mold on the baseboard and things like that, homeowner can look after it. If you've got a basement full of mold, we'll come in. And when I go into a mold situation, first thing I do is I put on either my dust mask or because I deal with mold so much, I actually have a respirator with special cartridges. It's a higher level of protection. And then I'll go down and I'll assess the situation. First thing we need to do is find the source. We need to get that source. We need to stop the problem. If we don't stop the source, even if we clean up all the mold, it's going to come back.
Right. Okay. And so we find the source, crack in the foundation, whatever. Moisture
Have that
from
repaired.
there. Have that repaired. You mediate the mold.
Yes.
So what do you clean up mold with? And do you come in with those hazmat suits, the big weight suits,
We
and the
do.
gloves and the
Absolutely.
goggles and all that? Yeah.
100%. So
Okay.
my guys will come in, or I'll come in, or however it is, we'll come in with those on. First thing we'll do is we'll set up a containment barrier. We'll turn the air conditioning off, or we'll turn the heating off, what have you. We'll block off all the heat registers so that as we start to disturb the mold in that area, it's not going to get through the rest of the house. Okay, so we'll seal those off. We'll block, let's say it's a basement, we'll block the staircase off with some poly, and then we'll put negative air units inside the room, depending the size of it, 1 to 3. Okay, if it's a larger commercial area, it's a little different. And what that's designed to do is we create a negative pressure in that area so that as we're working, okay, nothing leaves. Because it's under negative pressure, air wants to infiltrate from all the cracks and crevices outside the space to the inside. That keeps everything contained. Those air scrubbers have HEPA filters in them, okay, and they capture all the mold spores that are in the air at the time. Okay, the last thing we want to do is open up your basement, have mold spores go throughout your house. Now you've got a completely contaminated house. So we get it contained. We mitigate it by either removing the drywall, washing hard surfaces, anything that's a porous surface that's got mold on it, kids, stuffed animals, things like that, they're likely to be thrown out. Drywall that's got mold on both sides, for example, is not going to be salvageable, so that will be taken out and replaced. Any wood structure behind the drywall is going to be washed. Soap and water, again, is what we use. If the structural integrity of the wood is good, we're going to dry it. And then we would put a antimicrobial spray, Benefect. It's based on thyme, the spice thyme. It's non-hazardous to humans and to pets and those kinds of things. It's got a bit of a clove-like smell to it, lasts about 3 hours. And then we just let everything dry. We'll wait probably 2 to 3 days. Once it's nice and dry, we'll come back, okay, and then we can start the rebuild portion, put the new drywall and whatever has to.
Okay, so do you do that reconstruction, or you have people that do that for you?
We do some of the reconstruction ourselves, and then we have a list of subcontractors that we use for that.
Okay, and depending on the source, they may be eligible for insurance coverage depending on what caused it, I guess.
That's right. So when you're thinking of insurance, if it's an insurance claim, insurance generally does not cover mold specifically, but you have to think sudden and accidental. If it's something that was a long-term problem, then it's not sudden and accidental, won't be covered. It's much more complicated than that, but that's the gist of it.
Okay, all right. So if someone has a problem, would they call you first, or would they call their insurance company first?
Call us because there's no obligation and you haven't got a claim at that point. If you call your insurance company, depending on the company, sometimes you make a claim, you make a call, it's automatically logged in as a claim, and nobody wants that.
Even if they didn't pay out to fix anything, they
That's
call
correct.
it a claim.
Some do, that's right.
Some do. Eugh,
Yeah.
that's nasty.
So call us, no obligation, no cost. We go out and have a look.
Okay. Now, so once you do all your work, there's people want some assurance that a house is clean because they've come into it. Maybe they want to resell it. They need some assurance that the mold's not back or that there's livable quantity of spores in the air or whatever, because there's always spores in the air. It's just how much.
Right. So we provide a guarantee that when we're done, there is no visible mold. Everything that was there that was identified has been removed and is gone. We'll provide that in writing. The biggest thing you have to remember is you got to keep the moisture levels down and make sure that the temperatures are good, and 60% relative humidity is the number you need to stay below.
Keep below that.
And keep below that, then you'll be...
I think much below 40 you start getting a little electrical shock or whatever because it gets too dry, right?
That's right. Yeah.
But too moist isn't good either. Things start swelling in your house. And
Exactly
doors
right.
don't shut right.
Doors don't shut right. Floors can sometimes buckle a wee bit.
Okay. Well, it's been great talking with you. How do they reach you, Jim, if they have a bit of a mold problem?
Give me a call on my cell anytime. 613-791-1774.
Okay, say that one more time because they might want to write it down.
613-791-1774.
Great. Well, this has been educational for me. I'm sure it's been educational for our listeners on the Inside Track on Real Estate. And right now, I'd just like to feature one of our properties that we have for sale. This one's actually out in Arnprior. Wonderful Arnprior. It's quite a quick drive in now with the highway improved. And this has beautiful views of the Madawaska River. Great house, relatively large. It's a bungalow with a loft bedroom, so you've got a couple bedrooms on the main level. Great entertaining space, elegant, really, really sharp house. $525,000, and it's a very big house. So if that might be one of your thoughts, is to maybe retire towards the Madawaska River?
Maybe that would be the perfect house for me to retire in.
Maybe, yeah. And I don't think it has any mold either.
Perfect.
But even if it did, you could fix it.
I could.
So if you'd like some information on that home or any other home, give the Dekker Team a call at 613-860-4663. That's 613-860-4663. And if you have any ideas of people you'd like us to talk with on the Inside Track on Real Estate so we can help educate you on real estate and the real estate process and managing a home, maintaining a home, any of those ideas, please email us at info@dekkerteam.com. That's info@dekkerteam.com. We'd be happy to address your questions on a future show. Thanks for joining us on the Inside Track on Real Estate. I'm Ken Dekker with my special guest, Jim Halloran. We're glad you joined us. Bye for now.
Bye.
What you wanna do?